Hello, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Joe Longo. This is Studio B. I feel like we all know who Studio B is, but if there's some people that don't know, Studio B is a wonderful well-tech company. I love that, well-tech company. And you can practice yoga with us every day, and people from all over the world every day. And we bring yoga and mindfulness into the workplace as well. So it's a really beautiful organization. I'm so happy to be part of it. I'm so happy to be here with my good friend, Robert Sturman, world-renowned photographer, artist, humanitarian, amazing friend. So today we're going to talk a little bit about Robert's work, some things that Robert has done. Robert's actually going to share a beautiful presentation with us, showcasing some of his work and mindfulness and all kinds of good things. So hello, everyone. Hello, Robert.
Hello, Joe.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
I thought it would be fun. You know, I met Robert 2011, maybe. And the really interesting thing about when I met Robert, I think when I first realized who Robert was, I was with my friend Jennifer Pasteloff, and she was like, "You should meet my friend Robert. He's a brilliant photographer." And she gave me her card. And me being a photographer, I was like, "All right, let's see this guy's work." And it was one of your Polaroids of Jen. And I'm like, ooh, this guy's good. This guy is really good. And then slowly, Robert and I became really good friends. I'm super thankful to have Robert in my life over the years. As we had bounced ideas and collaborated together and created some fun work. And I don't remember when it was, 2018, Robert invited me to San Quentin with him to document his work in San Quentin Prison, which was literally life-changing. If you ever get an opportunity to go, well, to San Quentin or any prison that is doing prison yoga, go take that chance, because those men in that yoga group were literally some of the nicest, warmest, loving people I've ever met in my life. Completely life-changing. So Robert, thank you for being here. How are you doing today, my friend?
I'm doing great. Thank you. How about you?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be here. So you're going to share some images. You're going to give us a wonderful little presentation. Yes?
That will happen whenever
So
you say
before
go.
we go there, I think a lot of people know Robert as a yoga photographer, a yoga artist, right? And connecting and his humanitarian work with the Prison Yoga Project and the Africa Yoga Project. But one of the things that I think is really interesting is that you were tell us what you were with the Grammys. You were the artist.
For the 47th Grammy Awards, I was chosen to be the official visual artist for that year, which meant that they gave me a Grammy to make a photograph with, and I could do whatever I wanted, like to represent that year and what humanity was all about. And in that year, I went and I looked at all the history of the posters, and there was never a human being in one of their official artworks. And I thought that was ridiculous, that it was just a celebration of the trophy, the gramophone, in that particular artist's style. And that seemed a little absurd to me. So I basically incorporated what I did with my work and just had a human being carrying the Grammy Award with a guitar slung over his shoulder. So that was a lot of fun.
Did they let you keep the Grammy?
No, they didn't let me keep it. But there was the guy that made the Grammys, like actually was the welder that made them, really loved my work. And he sent me a box of Grammys to just do more work with. And so they're sitting in my shed still. I don't want them or anything. I'm not going to put one out or sell them or anything like that. But I do have a box of Grammys.
You should just line them up behind you. Just all of your Grammys.
Right.
Many years ago, I photographed James Poser, who is the keyboard player in The Roots. And we were photographing in Questlove's studio. And I was like awestruck just being in Questlove's studio. And I'm looking around, and over in the corner on the windowsill, just filled with dust, was a Grammy. And I'm like, that's a Grammy sitting over there on the shelf, just filled with dust. I'm like, can I take that home with me? Such a lovely experience. You know, that our cameras, you know, take us all over the place and the things that we get to capture and share with the world. I'd love for you to tell us how did you get into the humanitarian work?
Well, when I first started, the industry was extremely homogenous, and it was all white people. And I just looked for every opportunity to just become more inclusive and to deal with themes of equality. And yeah, and it just one thing led to another, where there was more to the world than just pretty pictures and the glitz and the glam of it all, and skinny girls. And so yeah, I just followed my heart. That's that's the humanitarian work. You just follow your heart.
How about because like I said earlier, you know, that first experience for me in prison, literally, I feel like it changed my life.
Right.
What was your first experience like going into prison and documenting this?
You know, that's a really great question. This was in 2011, and I was pretty much obsessed with prison documentaries for a while. And I watched this show called Oz, O-Z. And it was a prison show. I believe it took place in Illinois. But it was so violent, and it was about 5 seasons. By season 3, they just killed everyone off. And I just said, this can't be good for my health. So I stopped watching it, and I gave up all the prison sensationalism. And then about, you know, just couple months later, a warden contacted me just out of nowhere and said she started a yoga program and was wondering if I'd like to photograph it in her system. And I thought, wow, okay, cool. And so I did that. But when I went in, I mean, I was obviously, I had a lot of questions. I was scared. Of course, someone was going to kill me. You know, I mean, all this stuff came up, ridiculous stuff. I mean, seriously. But so I definitely was, definitely scared. And then I remember what changed. And when I first went in, one of the first times, the instructor didn't really introduce me so much. And there's a lot of rules. Like, don't go step behind a person in prison. And there's so many rules that you learn in Prison Yoga Project doing the training, which I had no idea. And to this day, I asked James Fox, why didn't you tell me about any of these rules? And but for some reason, it didn't matter. I didn't have to follow any rules, because the first thing he said after the class was, did you see how everybody, they all lit up? And that's when I realized that how powerful it was to use our cameras to pay attention to other human beings and let them know that they're okay.
Yeah, that they're seen.
Yeah.
Very.
Oh, yeah.
Very beautiful. And how about getting into the veteran side of things? How did that come about?
You know, just a woman asked if she could wear her Army uniform for a shoot, and it's her shoot, that's fine, whatever you want to do. And then, so we did the shoot, and then I asked if I could post one, and it blew up. The world was hungry for it. Organizations were hungry for it to represent what they do for first responders. And then one thing led to another is more people from the military started to ask me to tell their story. And that's usually how it works. I mean, social media has done us a tremendous amount of positive things because it spreads information very quickly. You know, obviously there's some negative things about it, but as far as, you know, they could have just been published in a magazine, and then somebody could have written me a letter and put it in the mailbox and all that. But this is very fast how information spreads. Mm-hmm. And so before you know it, I was on military bases and aircraft carriers.
Which is another, you know, magical thing that happens with our camera. Like, we never know what's going to happen, and it could just be that simple that someone says, "Hey, I'm going to wear my uniform." Like, the thought, right. It's almost as if we've been given a gift of like, "Hey, are you going to seize this opportunity now?" Without realizing, you know, it's like we're just going with the flow, and we're just being like, "Yeah, of course, it's your shoot. We'll do whatever you want." Right. Turns into then this beautiful thing. And I have to say, being on an Air Force carrier photographing yoga, also another highlight that Robert allowed me behind the scenes on one day, which was another magical experience, just, you know, seeing you work with that group of military personnel.
Right, because so you can see how it led to that humanitarian work, because it's diversifying, you know, mm-hmm. If all we're seeing is just this cookie cutter world, which that world has to be celebrated and honored too, because it's all humanity. But mm-hmm. It just makes it so much more interesting to photograph the whole world rather than right. Just one slice of it.
Right, exactly. So you're going to take us on a little journey through some of your images, a little presentation.
I am.
So everyone that is here, kick back, grab a cup of tea, and enjoy. Robert's going to take us on a little journey through magical art.
All right. So this is a little bit of a condensed version of a celebration of humanity through the art of yoga photography. And I go much more in depth to the questions that Joe actually spontaneously asked me a moment ago. So we're going to start with prison. So let's go in. I feel like prison taught me just about everything I needed to know about photography. And the first thing, as I said before, that I noticed was that human beings have this deep desire to be seen. And it didn't matter if I was working with somebody that was going to be on the cover of a yoga magazine, or I was working with someone serving a life sentence. The common denominator was that human beings light up when they're paid attention to. And I realized that the camera was really just an excuse to pay attention to others and to reflect back to them that they're okay, that they're worthy of being here. The second thing I learned was that photographs truly have the potential to change the world. Because what a photograph is an idea. And if it's a great idea, like yoga and meditation in the prison system, or really for anybody, then, and people can feel that image rather than just reading statistics and hearing about it. But if you can feel it, you remember it. And what happens is it starts to get into our cells and it starts to become normalized. And it's how we perpetuate reality and allow for one flower to turn into thousands and thousands of flowers. And it spreads so quickly, especially through social media, that bloggers will start writing about it, magazines, newspapers, and it just becomes the new normal. one of the most important things that I learned was from this warden. She was the warden at the first prison I ever went to, and the one that invited me in. And after I worked for a day in her prison, we spoke for a long time in her office, and she would say something to me that would inspire my career, my life to this day. And she said, I noticed that the guys who do the yoga and meditation make better choices. I make better choices. So this would go down to Mexico, start photographing in prisons in different places of the world, telling a story of human beings in pursuit of being better at being human. From juvenile hall to deal with the trauma, and for people to have the opportunity to build their toolkits to be able to deal with the inevitable trauma that comes with being human. So let me back up a little with this Polaroid process that we were just discussing a moment ago, and to an early part of my career. When I first started in my evolution as an artist, I was a photographer in high school. And then I became a painter because I wanted to, I was fascinated with the idea that you could create something from nothing. So the way this Polaroid process worked is I would use this $5 camera. This taught me that equipment was almost irrelevant to what our sincerity was. So what happened was I would use this $5 camera, and right when the film would come out of the camera, I would warm it up in the sun and carve into the surface of the film and accentuate the lines and the forms while the chemistry was still wet. Now, this was a tricky process because first I had to make a good picture, and so I had to really pay attention to the light. And then I had to, once the picture came out, and you didn't make a lot, you had to really pay attention because it was $1.50 a sheet. This was before, you couldn't subscribe to that god-awful perspective that, well, if I take 1,000, maybe I'll get lucky and get one. That didn't seem very Zen to me. So you really had to pay attention. And then when it came out, you carved into it. And this was before that sentence, I'll fix it later in Photoshop, was invented. Shh.
Chai wants to be part of the show.
Yeah. This was before that was invented. So you had to really pay attention, and it really taught me how to be mindful, to breathe, to be present, take my picture, and then sit down right then and there and do the carving. And that would take me all over the world. These are in Nepal, in India, Mandalay.
When you were doing the carvings, what kind of, were you using a paintbrush? How are you doing that?
Look, the key in the bottom. That was my tool.
Serious?
Yes. So
wow.
The key. So as I said, there was no fixing it later in Photoshop, which was a great thing, a great gift that we had, because we had to be present. We had to get it right in the moment because we only had one chance to do it. There was no later. It forced us to be here. So that would lead to I'm leaving a lot of series out, but a major one I did was in Cuba, celebrating the music and the people of Cuba. And I had gone all over the world celebrating the diversity of the planet. And the Cuba series would catch the attention of the Grammy Awards. And this is what we were just speaking of, the humble heroics of the musical poet and incorporating a human being into that. And that would lead to a series with New Orleans musicians from Fats Domino, and then 80th birthday commemorative piece with B.B. King. This was on the back of his bus, to a portrait of Keb Mo, to being chosen to be the official artist for representing the United States in the first ever World Cup on the African continent in South Africa. But then something happened, and Polaroid decided to go out of business. And the film, there was only so much more left. And I had just started practicing yoga at that time. And I looked around and I noticed that the yogis were some of the most beautiful figurative poets I'd ever seen. And so I devoted my last 1,000 or so rolls of film to the study of yoga and did a massive series called Poetry of the Gods. And I realized I could tell the story of humanity through this language of yoga, of what it means to be human. And I realized that it tied into the history of art, of this theme of human beings in pursuit of excellence, of humanity in pursuit of being better at being human, of the longing. And I saw that it began to creep into my work. That theme, that tie-in with the history of art. So if we were to look at it from an objective perspective, and forget you don't even need to have heard of yoga to feel and understand the pictures, the poses, the longing. So if you look at it objectively, you just wonder, and it was something from the past that was dug up, you'd wonder who these yogis were, who these extraordinary human beings were that lived with so much sincerity in their heart, opening up towards the clouds, the sky. Sincere, devoted, all over the world. Longing, reaching, offering. Reaching, opening, being vulnerable. Reaching in Havana, Cuba. In New York. Chicago, Illinois. Florence, Italy. Reaching. Agra, India. Slowing down, taking a moment, finding stillness, realizing that there's more to life than being busy. From the foothills of Kilimanjaro, Maasai warriors slowing down, taking a moment, reaching, opening. The Havasupai Indian tribe in the Southwest United States. Aztec warrior deep in the heart of Mexico. Mexico City, ranch deep in Baja, California, El Ranchero. Nairobi, Kenya. The Netherlands. London. Rome. Bethlehem, Palestine. The old city of Jerusalem. All over the world. San Francisco. The house painter. The electrician. Kids. Senior citizens. Tao Porchon Lynch. This is when she was 95 years old. Another game changer. It's never
and you
too
and Tao
late.
had a real special relationship.
That's true. That's true. I photographed her from when she was 93 years old till 101. First of all, because, you know, it's life, our photographs are an expression of the life that we're living. And we were good friends. And so a lot of photographs came out of it, but I also knew it was going to inspire people, because if she's doing something at 100 years old and me at 50 saying, oh, it's too late to, you know, that kind of talk. So this is one of the game changers. The Army, reaching, longing. The Navy, waking up. The Air Force, the Marines, and the Coast Guard. The world is changing. The flight attendant, Sukhothai, Thailand, Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia, schoolyards across the globe, from Boyle Heights, Los Angeles, offering them the tools that they will need to deal with the inevitable trauma that comes with being human. Nairobi, Kenya, Rishikesh, India. The tools. Doctors, surgeons, police officers. Remember what the warden said about her prisoners. I noticed that the guys who do the yoga and meditation make better choices. We all need to make better choices. The flowers, and it becomes fields, massive fields of flowers. When we celebrate the good in this world, what is working. Firefighters, the trauma that they have to deal with. It's not seeing things that human beings shouldn't have to see. They save lives, and yoga and meditation saves their life. The Braille Institute. The generosity of another human being who doesn't necessarily know what a photograph is, but allowing me to see them. So really it has so much more to do with the human connection than it does to do with the photograph. The photograph is just a byproduct of something that was so beautiful that it was born out of that, but the foundation is what's important, the humanity, rather than being a thief and stealing photographs from people because you want a great photograph. Breast cancer survivors, using the camera to tell a different story, a story of dignity, of releasing shame, that scars are beautiful. This is Yulati about 8 years ago. And then this is Uladi just last year. People heal with intention. How beautiful. And sincerity. Extraordinary human beings. This is Adrienne. A few years ago, she was a spectator at the Boston Marathon. Just a spectator. She never was a runner. Then the bomb went off. She lost her leg. A month later, she decided she wanted to become a marathon runner. And so she runs marathons. Extraordinary human beings, we are. Africa. Tools to deal with the inevitable trauma. These are orphans. This is in orphanages in Nairobi. Learning the tools. Processing the trauma. The foothills of Mount Kilimanjaro, the greatest yoga studio I've ever been to. An island in the middle of the Indian Ocean with a thriving yoga community, diversity, the world, the whole world. It's a big, beautiful world. A prison outside of Nairobi, Kenya, when, again, they didn't ask what was inside my camera or to see it or to be tagged, or none of that mattered. What mattered was the connection, the reflecting back. These women were all living with the HIV virus. The photographs were insignificant. It was the paying attention, the shared humanity, the heart connection. Veterans, the astronomical statistic of over 20 American soldiers committing suicide every day. Can't imagine the statistic if they added it all up all over the world. A veteran is a veteran, and the world fights wars. We wanted to change that and tell a new story of becoming whole again. The trauma. People need tools. Imagine the trauma of losing your best friend to a bomb in Afghanistan and having to deal with that for the rest of your life every day. War, people are never the same, whether they were hurt physically or not. Never the same. So provide the tools. The world is changing. West Point. Teach them the tools while they're young, before the trauma. A commander, retired Navy commander who devotes his life to teaching yoga and meditation. The world is changing, indeed. All 5 branches of the military. Joe took this picture. Thank you, Joe.
You're welcome.
The beauty, we can never stop. We can never point to it enough. It's how beautiful this place is. It's a political statement to focus on the beauty. The beauty. Hope for a tomorrow.
Wow. So it's interesting, you know, we've been friends for so long, and that's the first time that I've seen that. And it's so moving, all of it. Like the comments that were coming in, like it's just, I feel like I'm gonna cry because it is just so beautiful and so much beauty everywhere. Um, I'm so blessed that you are my friend. And you know, sometimes there's these things like we forget the amazing, how amazing the people in our lives are. So thank you for reminding me, you know, how freaking amazing you are, and you know, everything that you've done and accomplished, and how you've inspired me to not only be a better photographer, but to be a better man, to be a better human, and to care in ways that I never imagined. So, you know, thank you for that.
Thank you.
We're going to open it up for questions, but were we going to talk? Do you want to talk about a couple tips? Do you want to share a couple tips with everybody in Studio B? Since, you know, we do a lot of filming of ourselves, and, you know, we're taking pictures of ourselves. Maybe some tips to share with the Studio B community, and really anybody out there that has a camera or a phone that may help us.
Well, that is okay. Here's one important tip, but you know, all my tips they're technical, but they're a lot more than technical. So I believe that the theme of my work is one of the great themes for me is to never look down on anyone. And my work is actually born from the ground up. And what that means is always on other people's level. I never look down on anyone. And sometimes I actually look up to them. So one of the things, whether you're going to be making yoga photographs or just photographing your pet. So this is a very clear example that you will be able to remember because it'll make an impact. So there, I made Chai's picture. You heard her barking earlier. But I didn't take the time to get down to her level. And so you can see that it almost looks as if I'm looking down on her. So when we get down to their level, it changes everything. It changes the way we see, and ultimately, it changes the way they feel seen. So never look down on anyone. And that's probably the most important tip that I can give about photography, because it doesn't just pertain to yoga at all. And there's Jennifer's daughter, Tess. Jennifer, are you here?
Yes.
I don't know if Jen may.
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hi.
Huh.
Look at that little girl.
So now you know why I was crawling on the ground.
Yes, I do. Yep.
How old is she now?
She'll be 13 in 2 weeks.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
There you are.
Yeah. Hi.
Hey, you said we were going to do something together.
I know. It's here we are, you know, and you're making me cry.
I think you made all of us cry. So I would love to open it up. If anybody has any questions for Robert or anything about any of the images, please let's have a conversation with all of us. Don't be shy.
I don't have a question, but I just want to express how extremely touched I was by your pictures. It reminds me of how important it is what we do as teachers, and how important it is to see people for who they really are as a human being, instead of, you know, whether it is you know, whether they're a prisoner or an army general, they're all human beings. So, and I could see that in your pictures, that that's what you see. And it was really moving. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
I'm feeling really emotional, so I don't know if I'm going to be able to talk a lot. But
sweet.
My husband is an officer in the Navy, and he's lost people. And seeing those pictures of the people in the military was just really, really touching. And I've taught in prisons before as well, and it just felt really raw. It was like a full body experience for me. And internally, we've had a lot of conversations about making people feel. And so seeing your presentation today just really brings that home. The importance of just a simple image can make people feel like they belong and they're seen and they're valuable and they have worth. So thank you for your work. It means so much.
Thank you. I feel you. Thank you.
I have a question for you, Robert. When did you get your first camera? When did you take your first picture?
Well, we had family cameras ever since I was a little kid, but my first real camera was when I was 14. My dad, I went to boarding school, and when he dropped me off, he gave that to me and told me to sign up for a photography class. Yeah. And
that was it? You were sold?
No, I actually asked him what the hell am I supposed to take pictures of? You know, I didn't have much of the art spirit yet at all. And he just, you know, I don't think it was a deep thought, his response. I think it was just kind of a matter of fact. He said, I don't know, anything that you love. And that's honestly, that's the greatest advice I've ever been given artistically. Yeah.
So then when did your like artistic life really come to be?
Well, first of all, I was very bad at photography.
I think we all were.
Yeah, very bad. And then I would get lucky once in a while. You're like, ooh, I got lucky. And I try to duplicate, copy that luck until eventually it became skill. But, you know, that was I started when I was 14. And I'd say that for a good 10 years, I created out of desperation. I clung to art for an identity and to find meaning in the world because I didn't feel okay. And, but then when I was 30, I went to India for the first time. And when I got there, I started at Osho's meditation resort center. And when I walked in, there was a big sign that said, it was called The Way of the Creator. And just out of nowhere, this sign, and it said, The Way of the Creator. And it roughly said, to be creative is to be in love with life. We can only be creative if we love life deeply enough that it comes naturally to offer a poem here, a painting there, a dance over here. And to me, that was everything that I needed to start a path of yoga. Forget the asana part and all that. To rewrite the story of what it meant to be an artist, because my heroes in the history of art lived lives of self-destruction. They drank too much, their relationships didn't work out, they were self-destructive, suicidal, I mean, the whole nine. And meanwhile, their work is being cherished in museums, multi-million-dollar structures, in museums all over the world, and yet they couldn't even take care of themselves, which was a big awakening to me to rewrite that story. And that quote by Osho was the beginning of make my life my art. And then everything else would be an expression of that.
So beautiful. And such a great way to look at this beautiful spinning rock that we're on, and really loving it and connecting to all of it and seeing the art everywhere. Like I go for walks in the woods with Stella in the morning when the sun is, you know, coming up and all of like everything is just coming to life.
Yeah.
And it's like such a miracle to see that. And I it just blows my mind when it's taken for granted and when people can't see it. It's like just seeing a little leaf pop up in the morning is like the most beautiful miracle.
Yeah.
Ever. And then
It's very clear. You leave a daily diary of that share it with the world to see of your wonder with existence. And it's beautiful.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
I
you can't fake it. That's who you are.
Yeah.
You happen to know how to make good pictures.
Well, it just happened. At one point I was really bad as well, really bad. And I literally flunked my first photography class, which then sent me on my journey, right? Down, you know, to where I am. But I needed to be in that place at that time. And I failed because I didn't go to class. I fell in love with the art though. But then that was it. Then I was like, I'm giving up a football scholarship and I'm going to go to art school to do this. And it was, people were like, are you crazy? My parents were like, what are you doing? I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing what feels right inside. And here I am. Yeah. So did you go to art school?
I did.
Like trained painter?
Yeah, I'm somewhat classically trained. Like I struggled. It was very hard. I drew for years in sculpture and painting. And that was all so hard. And I think because it's developing, nothing came natural to me, nothing, except for breathing.
Mm-hmm.
But then after doing that, it was one of those things where I felt like I had to know how to do that in order to be able to call myself an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And then I went back to the camera because really the camera's, it's just the most natural thing to me. And it's so easy that you have a 1,000 little painters inside there doing the work for you.
Right. But then you bring it in and then you add your whole style of editing to it, where it goes from just being a photograph to really being a piece of art.
A piece of art that started with an idea.
Right. Exactly. Do you ever feel, where did the ideas come from?
Like, you know, I could be read an article or hear that there was a thing called Prison Yoga Project. And then the idea is, wow, I'd like to do that or something. Or they just come from,
they just pop in. I know that's a really hard question. It's kind of loaded because I don't know where mine comes from. It's just like, oh shit, where did that come from? And you know, we run with it. And I know this is kind of like a tricky question. I'm curious to see how you're going to answer it though. Do you have a favorite image? What's your favorite image?
Boy, that is a tricky question. Because it depends on the day. But if I had to pick one let's come back to that one. I'll be thinking about it here. The one that really just like told the story, like I only could leave one. That would be an interest. Can I change the question to that? Yeah,
if you can only leave one image for mankind, what would it be?
Of course, it would be the portrait I made of you.
It is a good one. It's really good.
Of course.
That's great. Anybody else out there want to chime in, ask some questions, curious?
Camacha Reese. I know I'm looking at this chat. I have a favorite. Camacha in the Rain in New York City. Yeah, that's a pretty one. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I just think of, when I think of you, I think of that image, and it was just such a, and I still follow her on social media, and she's had children now, and she's a great teacher.
Yeah, I didn't think of that one. That one is profound, with all the New Yorkers with their umbrellas and her doing a wheel pose, a heart opener in the rain. Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good one.
Thank you.
I remember when that trip was happening and it was pouring rain. I'm like, oh, I feel so bad for Robert, but it didn't stop you, didn't slow you down. You're still out there. Can you answer Jake's question? Because I love this. What's in your camera bag?
I mean, it's a great question, because it's not what you would think that a photographer would have. A camera.
I'm still blown away by the cameras that Robert uses. I'm like, dude, seriously, technology, get a new camera, man.
If I go to the beach, I bring one of those loops so I can see in the bright sun. Or I bring a reflector in case the subject brings a friend, and I might have him. I mean, that's about it. I bring an extra battery. It's an interesting story, because the last time I was in Mexico at a federal prison, the one that El Chape got out of. El Chape? Is that his name? El Chape, yeah. There were 7 checkpoints to get in. And in the first one, the guy searched through my bag, because I always have to tell what I'm bringing in. And they're always, people are always like surprised that I don't have lights and this, that, the other. But in this one, I had, so Jake, is Jake asked that question? Yeah. So it's a great question, because there were 2 things that he pulled out of the bag, and he didn't speak English, but he like wondered, and he looked at the list, and it was a penny, because I didn't claim it, write it down. And I think it was maybe like an extra flash drive or something like I don't know, but so minimalist.
And
no more pennies.
Your camera that you use, Canon 6D, right?
Yeah, but I used to use a Rebel for the first. Because I was so used to using the Polaroid, making work sing and dance with the Polaroid, and coming into photography with a painter's spirit, that Rebel was extraordinary. It was phenomenal. And I went from trying to run a marathon in high heels to getting a pair of Air Jordans.
Right, everything's changed. I can't wait till you actually get another camera. Like, oh wow.
People have told me that the new mirrorless, it's not that big of a step.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Okay.
Just the focus. Do we have another one? I'm curious to see what has captured your attention to photograph this past year of COVID.
Well, that's a great question. I left those images out. I documented the civil rights movement, because when I was 19, I apprenticed to a professional photographer who marched with Martin Luther King, and he showed me a lot of his black and white work of the civil rights movement in the Deep South, of Black people fighting for equality. And so when it showed up right outside in my city in Los Angeles, like a massive protest, I was so envious of him that he got to photograph something so important back in the 60s, that when this happened just last year, it was a no-brainer. That was it. There was like, You have to be willing to change your style. And to me, that was a perfect progression, because yoga philosophy teaches us that we're all equal, and yet reality wasn't a reflection of that. So Black Lives Matter movement was, which I like to equate directly with the civil rights movement, was what I've been up to, what I was up to last year.
And you made a couple images with some doctors as well?
Yeah, I photographed a lot of first responders.
But just this past year,
yeah,
COVID hit.
Right, yeah, that were from, you know, people that worked at pharmacies to grocers to all the people that were on the front line when everybody was on lockdown.
Good stuff, Robert. Good stuff.
But that was all done with the phone. Like, if I was going to pick up a prescription for my mom and dad to deliver to them, I'd first photograph and food, first photograph the grocer, and then photograph the pharmacist, and then photograph the doorman where they live. And the common theme really was they were all in service, and they all, you know, mask was the greatest prop of the 21st century.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh yeah, the mask, that must have been 2020.
Yeah. So here's a good one. Is there anything you wouldn't photograph?
You know, like, I don't think I'd be interested in women that have been physically enhanced leaning over Harley Davidsons. I had to think of something.
That's a great answer. That's a great answer.
But as far as yoga is concerned, I'd photograph my worst enemy. People I despise, if I, you know, people that are doing evil in the world, because it's showing a bright spot. Mm-hmm. and helping that become, reflecting back to them something beautiful about them. So when you see like people in the American military, and a lot of people comment on my work when they see that, and they're like, yeah, America, you know, and it's, yeah, okay, I'm proud or all this, but it's not nationalistic, it's humanistic, and it's about people that have been affected by war. And so, you know, if I grew up in Taliban territory, I would notice that that so many of them were screwed up. And if they were practicing yoga, it'd be a great photo op.
Mm-hmm. So as we wrap things up, I want to be mindful of everybody's time, but really quick before we leave, Robert, do you have anything happening now that the world is opening up that we can participate in?
As a matter of fact, I do. I have a retreat at the end of September in Wisconsin. It's a 5-day retreat, and it's the only time I'm traveling this year. And it's basically learning how to see, how to use your camera to see. And it's not technical. It can be if you want. I'm there at people's service, but that's listed on my Instagram or website. And it's at the Wild Rice Retreat Center. It's going to be phenomenal. And it's not, you don't have to want to be a yoga photographer. You're just curious and want to learn and be around people that are discovering how incredibly beautiful the world is, and how we can use our phones as a way to complement the beauty and explore the beauty and make use of this thing that's going to be part of us for the rest of our lives, this phone camera.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think, you know, which I really love about you, the best camera that you have is the camera that is on you. So if it's your phone, if it's a Polaroid, if it's actually your camera bag. So it's like, you know, these little hand computers that we have are magical.
They really are.
You know, for what we can do.
It's so sophisticated.
Right? So thank you all so much for joining us, Robert. Thank you for taking the time and sharing your images and sharing everything with us. I really appreciate you. I appreciate all you do for the community, for the world, for art, for humanity. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And everyone, thank you for joining us. Have a beautiful day. If you're not part of the Studio B family, please come check us out. We are obviously a lovely group of humans here raising the vibration on the planet and reminding everyone that we're infinite creative beings. So come hang out with us. Thank you all so much. Have a beautiful day, everybody.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you so much.